They laughed at me during the meeting. Not openly, not cruelly. The kind of laughter that pretends to be harmless, the kind that assumes you won't respond. My name is Daniel. I was 42 years old when I learned that silence can be mistaken for weakness. I had worked at the same company for 9 years. I wasn't loud, I wasn't charming, I didn't play politics. I did my job well. But competence without confidence makes people comfortable overlooking you. The meeting room was cold that morning. My manager, Steve, stood at the front, clicking through slides with practiced ease. I had prepared a proposal, spent weeks refining it, checking numbers, anticipating objections. When my turn came, I spoke calmly. I didn't rush. I didn't oversell. I explained how a small change in operations could save the company significant costs over time. Before I finished, Steve interrupted. He smiled. "That's ambitious," he said. Someone chuckled. Another person added, "Maybe in a perfect world." The laughter followed, soft, dismissive. I nodded and sat back down. I didn't defend myself, not because I didn't believe in the idea, because I had already learned how this room worked. After the meeting, a coworker patted my shoulder. "Don't take it personally," he said. "That's just how Steve is." That sentence had been used to excuse a lot of things. I returned to my desk and opened my spreadsheet. I kept working. Over the following months, my proposal was quietly reshaped. My ideas reappeared in other presentations without my name. Steve spoke them with confidence. People nodded. They praised his insight. I watched without reacting, not because I didn't notice, because I did. One afternoon, I overheard Steve talking near the break room. "He's solid," Steve said about me, "but not leadership material." Leadership, another word that gets decided for you when you stop trying to prove otherwise. I stopped volunteering ideas. I stopped correcting mistakes that weren't assigned to me. I focused on my responsibilities. And something unexpected happened. I gained time. Time to observe, time to learn, time to prepare. I enrolled in an evening certification program, paid for it myself, no announcements, no LinkedIn posts. I sharpened my skills quietly. Steve didn't notice. Why would he? He had already decided who I was. A year later, the company faced a major operational issue. Costs were rising, deadlines slipping. Suddenly, the solution sounded familiar, very familiar. The same one I had presented before, only now the room was listening, and this time I didn't speak. I let the numbers speak for me. I didn't announce my progress. I let people believe what they wanted to believe. At work, Steve continued to run meetings the same way. He spoke confidently. He took credit easily. When problems surfaced, he framed them as temporary. But numbers don't care about confidence. They care about accuracy. The operational issue worsened. Costs climbed. Timelines slipped. Upper management began asking questions. Real ones. Steve started calling for late meetings. He asked for ideas. Suddenly, everyone had something to say. I listened. Not to contribute, to understand where the gaps were. One evening, after most people had left, Steve stopped by my desk. "You've been quiet lately," he said. I looked up. "I've been focused," I replied. He nodded slowly. "We could use that," he said. "You've always been reliable." Reliable, another word that sounds positive until you realize it's a ceiling. I didn't argue. I asked one question. "What's the priority right now?" He hesitated. "That's what we're trying to figure out." I already knew the answer because I had been preparing for this moment for months. I shared a summary. Not the full plan, not the strategy, just enough. Steve's posture changed. "Can you put this together?" he asked. "I already have," I said. That was the first time I saw uncertainty in his expression. The following week, a review meeting was scheduled with senior leadership. Steve asked me to attend, not as a presenter, as support. I agreed. In the room, the mood was different, less casual, more precise. Executives asked direct questions. Steve answered broadly. When pressed, he looked at me. I spoke calmly. I referenced data, benchmarks, scenarios. I didn't overstep. I didn't embellish. I told the truth. The room leaned in. For the first time, I felt seen, not emotionally, professionally. After the meeting, an executive pulled me aside. "Have you shared this before?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "about a year ago." She paused. "Who reviewed it?" I named Steve. She thanked me and walked away. That moment changed everything. Not immediately, but inevitably. The pressure on Steve increased. Deadlines tightened. Expectations sharpened. He began forwarding emails to me with urgency. "Can you handle this? Can you double-check that? Can you join this call?" I did. Quietly. Consistently. I wasn't trying to replace him. I was letting the contrast speak. Weeks later, the company announced a restructuring. Nothing dramatic, just a shift. Steve was reassigned. Not fired, not humiliated, moved. I was offered a role I hadn't expected. Not a promotion, authority, responsibility without spectacle. The executive who had spoken to me earlier called it operational leadership. I accepted. Not because I wanted recognition, because I wanted alignment. Steve didn't congratulate me. He didn't need to. He understood. The laughter from that first meeting replayed briefly in my mind, then faded because it no longer defined me. I hadn't corrected them. I had outgrown them. The change didn't arrive with applause. It arrived with responsibility. My new role didn't come with a corner office or a dramatic announcement. It came with meetings where decisions mattered, with questions that required answers, not confidence. At first, people were careful around me, not unfriendly, adjusting. They were used to seeing me as dependable background noise. Now they had to listen. I didn't change my tone. I didn't remind anyone of the past. I worked the same way I always had, quietly, thoroughly. The difference was that now my work was no longer filtered through someone else's voice. The projects improved, not because I was exceptional, because I was honest about what worked and what didn't. Steve avoided me at first. Then one afternoon he stopped by. "I underestimated you," he said. It wasn't an apology. It was an acknowledgement. I nodded. "That happens," I replied. He left without another word. That was enough. Outside of work, something else shifted. I stopped carrying the tension home. I slept better. I spoke less about my job. When people asked how work was going, I said, "aligned," and I meant it. One evening, months later, I was asked to present to a new group of managers. As I stood at the front of the room, I noticed someone in the back smile the way Steve had once smiled at me, dismissive, confident. I paused for a moment, then I continued. I didn't rush. I didn't prove. I let the information do what it always does when it's solid. It changed minds. After the meeting, the same person approached me. "I didn't expect that," he said. I smiled politely. "Most people don't," I replied. Driving home that night, I thought about the man I had been at the start of this story. Quiet because he thought he had to be. Patient because he believed waiting was loyalty. I hadn't been wrong. I had just been early. Silence, I learned, is not weakness. It is preparation. And preparation, when paired with timing, becomes power. If you are listening to this and feeling overlooked, underestimated, quietly dismissed, remember this: You don't have to correct them. You don't have to convince anyone. Do the work, learn the room, let time reveal the difference. Because the strongest response is not being heard, it's being undeniable. And when that moment comes, you won't need to say anything at all.